Mike Tirico, who called the Domecoming game, the rebirth, back in 2006, shared his play chart that he had all of his notes on for each team and the players, personnel. First of all, stunning that he's kept this from a game 14 years ago, but the backup defensive backs, you see both Curtis DeLoach and Steve Gleason there. So, and he noted those backup safeties certainly showed up that night, didn't they? Sure did. Combined for one of, if not the greatest individual play in Saints history. A guy who was there on the sideline to witness it is Scott Shanle, who's always generous with his time and good enough to join us here today. Scott, we appreciate you, man. You, family, everybody doing okay?
Yep, doing good here. I appreciate you asking.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for the time. Let me go straight into the play. What do you remember? Like, what was your vantage point of watching the Gleason block?
Well, we just come off the field. Fajita made a great play on Vic on the perimeter, forced a fumble, and we couldn't get the scoop and score. So the next play, they're punting, and I didn't see it happen because usually we go sit on the bench and the coaches talk to us, kind of correct us and everything. But I just remember hearing a loud thud, and it sounded like the roof was going to blow off the Superdome. And I stood up immediately. Curtis scooped and scored, dunked it on the goalpost, and it was the loudest I've ever heard a stadium in my life.
So it's amazing that you could hear the thud, because wouldn't you think in a loud stadium you wouldn't be able to hear the thud of a football? So I guess it had quieted down. Then you hear the thud. Did you look to see the score on the field, or were you watching the scoreboard?
No, after I heard the thud, I stood up as quick as I could because the coaches were talking to us. And when you hear that sound, it's abnormal in a football game. So you stand up, something must have happened. And so I saw Curtis scoop and score and saw it was a touchdown and watched it all happen. Watched Rob Nikovich right there in the end zone celebrating with him. And just the whole sideline went crazy. And just the emotion that came out of the fans after that play was unlike anything I've ever experienced.
It being in the building, I think anybody, no matter where you were in that building, you could attest to that. So that moment happens. The rest of the game, like, did a lot of people said, there's no way we knew we weren't going to lose that night. Was there a point in the game where you felt that, or was it even before the game?
No, I think being realistic about it, we had went on the road and beat Cleveland, who, Cleveland is Cleveland. Then we went to Green Bay and beat Favre at Lambeau. So we had some confidence, but this was a whole different animal. There was a lot of pressure. We had the dome coming. We had Michael Vick, who was in his prime Michael Vick. And it was scary as a defense because you don't want to be the reason you don't win this big game. And so we had a lot of different adjustments on defense to contain Michael Vick. We made him try to beat us with his arm. He was not accurate that night. And I would say by halftime of that game, we were smothering him, and I had a feeling there's no way we're going to lose this game because the energy that everybody was playing with after that block punt by Steve and that scoop and score was on another level.
Scott Shanle is our guest. Former Saints linebacker, of course, was part of the Domecoming game. I can tell you what the Domecoming was like that day being outside and in the city leading up to it. What was it like for you as a player leading up to a primetime game?
Primetime games are always nerve-wracking because you have to sit around the hotel for all afternoon. And guys will tell you they either like to play right away in the morning because you wake up, you go to the stadium, or they like to play at night because you sleep in. But for me, I didn't like hanging around all day because it gave you a lot more time to kind of get more nervous for the game. And we knew it was a big game, but just going over to the stadium, it was my first ever home game as a thing. I'd never played at the Superdome even as a visiting player, so I had to navigate the player parking, all these different things. And I think some of that newness kind of distracted me from the magnitude of what this game was actually meaning on the outside, which maybe helped me play better as a player. But it was special. Even from the time when I realized it was a different game is when you could hear Green Day and U2 and you could hear them singing out there and we walk out to the Saints Are Coming song. I get chills just thinking about it because it felt beyond even something bigger than a Super Bowl atmosphere.
So you could hear U2 and Green Day?
Yeah, somebody had opened the locker room door and you could hear the start of the song. And then when we came out, you could hear it clear as day, what they were singing and the words and everything. And you're like, man, they got a song for us. We better do something special tonight.
Scott Shanle is our guest. Sean Payton has also told the story about the night before, right? The team meeting in the Dome. What can you recall of that?
Well, I remember Coach Payton talking. I don't remember the team meeting that night as much as I remember our walkthrough practice we had at the Superdome when they showed us the video of Katrina and the devastation and the magnitude of this game. But the same thing he repeated in that team meeting you're referring to is the same thing he really repeated that whole week. Is he told us all, this is going to be a special night. It's going to be a special night for a lot of people coming back to their city, celebrating, cheering on their team. But the way you make it memorable is to win the game, because it's a special night, but it becomes memorable if you win and you get to talk about that victory for the rest of your life. And that's the biggest thing I remember him preaching all week.
What about so it was the walkthrough that I was talking about. I said team meeting, but where he showed the video, can you remember what it was like being there, part of that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it made it real, because as a player, you're 24/7 football, just dedicated to it. And I think for me, a year earlier, I was sitting in Dallas as a Dallas Cowboy watching the 24/7 news just like everybody else. And I'd never been to New Orleans. I couldn't comprehend the magnitude of the devastation until I had gotten there, saw water lines on buildings, saw drywall lined up outside of homes being gutted, saw restaurants with closed, we'll be back soon. That's when it really struck to me the amount of the devastation that I had seen a year earlier on TV. And I think just Coach Payton showing that video to guys like myself who weren't part of going to San Antonio and being displaced. I mean, guys like Mike Carney and Will Smith and Deuce McAllister, tears were coming down their faces when we watched that video. And I looked around and I thought, man, this is huge. This is big. And we have to win this for the people, the city, the state, the region, our own teammates who were affected by it. So it's a really powerful video.
A couple more for you. What do you remember about post-game? So game ends, Saints win, celebration. Pick it up. What was the night like?
Well, a sense of relief, to be honest, because we knew it was a big game. We wanted to win that game. We wanted to notch another victory on the season, to have a successful season. But there was a lot of pressure to win that game. We knew everybody was watching. We knew everybody was rooting for the Saints to play well and to get that victory for the city. So a sense of relief that we were able to do it. But honestly, I don't really remember a whole lot from that night other than feeling proud in that moment that we were able to give that city and those fans something to cheer about and kind of start the resurrection back to putting New Orleans back on the map, and we're back.
Scott, I talked probably about, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so with Hollis Thomas about that night, and I'm pretty sure he told me that he went and partied until the sun came up. I think the next day might have been rough for Tank after the Domecoming night, which is probably par for the course.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of being in an NFL locker room. Some guys are a little more mild-mannered. Some guys are looking for any reason to party at all. Hollis probably was looking for any reason to party at all. So we all did our different things.
Scott Shanley's with us. He's on Twitter at Scott Shanle. Was there a moment where you realized that after the fact, just how big it was? Like that moment with Steve Gleason, or that game, was in a sense going to be immortal?
I think when we all learned that Steve was diagnosed with ALS, you kind of go back and you replay those plays and you think, man, the stars lined up for a reason. There's a reason why Fajita didn't scoop and score that fumble. It all lined up so that Steve had that play, and he used that as a platform, obviously in his fight for ALS, and it's become a powerful moment. But I'm going to be 100% honest. I think I was so young and naive at that moment. I knew it was big, but as the years go by, I appreciate it even more. And I think for me, when we won the Super Bowl, and I had people telling me they had parents and grandparents that were weeping. They never thought they'd see the day the Saints would win a Super Bowl. I think when we finally won a Super Bowl, I realized just how deep that connection between the fans and our team were. And it's not like that in pro sports. And I realized there was no other place I would have rather won a Super Bowl, because I don't think any other fan base would have appreciated it as much. So as the years went on, and they still, as the years go on, I appreciate that moment more and more as the years go by.
Awesome perspective, man, as I knew it would be. Scott Shanle, former Saints linebacker. You going to watch the game tonight?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to try to do some live tweeting. And, I got to prove to my kids that at one time I wasn't an old man and I actually tackled Michael Vick, because all I hear about is how fast Vick is on video games.
Well, enjoy that. It'll be a great opportunity to teach the youngins their comeuppance. But we appreciate – No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the only thing I wish we could have done different is found a way to score 5 more points. How great would that have been if we could have won that game 28-3? I mean, it would have just been perfect.
With that, that's what we call a walk-off in the biz. Scott, that's great stuff, man. I appreciate you as always. Have a good one, all right?
All right, take care.